The company with some of the best looking pre-built keyboards is back. No, I'm not talking about Varmillo, I'm talking about Akko. I've covered Akko quite a bit on this channel. In fact, I just covered some of their keycaps, which look pretty great. They've got 65% board, 75, 100, 96, all the percentages you can think of, except 60% up until very recently with the 3061 and now the 3061S. And this is the World Tour version. It's very pink and bright and colorful, and it's got some good things going for it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you for watching the video. Here we go. Intro, please. Full disclosure, this board was sent to me by Banggood.com, and as always, it does not affect my opinion of the board. And remember folks, this is a review of the keyboard and not of Banggood.com. Just throwing that out there. So yes, this is the 3061S. What does the S stand for? I don't know, they never tell me these things, but I can only assume it probably stands for subscribe, which you should be doing right now. As of writing, the 3061S comes in at about $70 on Banggood.com. It's a 60% board with no Bluetooth, no hot swap, but it is a board I can happily recommend because it comes with pre-lubricated switches. And before we get into the switches, which make this a pretty special board, let's talk about what's in the box. Inside the box, you've got a protective dust cover, the keyboard, and an instruction manual with English instructions on the back half instead of the front. Kind of thought there were no English instructions at first because they're usually in the front. There's also a pink USB-C to USB-A cable to match the case and a keycap puller. It has a bright pink case with rubber feet and two dual-layer height-adjustable legs, USB-C port at the top and Akko branding at the bottom. This is probably one of the only Akko boards I've gotten, aside from maybe the Sakura Jelly, that did not include optional keycaps to swap out, but that's probably because the keycaps included are kind of one of the stars of the show here. The 3061S comes with the Akko World Tour keycaps, which, if you're familiar with Akko at all, you may have seen online or in other videos. They've got these keycaps available for sale on their own, as well as on a bunch of other different form factor boards previously released from Akko over the years. It's got novelty keycaps, secondary katakana legends on the alpha keys, and I mean, just look at all the other keycaps. Look at that right shift. Look at the Shiba. How could you not like a keycap with a Shiba? It's not my first choice when it comes to aesthetics, but it definitely looks very nice, and in person it looks even better than it does in photos. The keycaps are your usual Akko affair, dye sublimated thick PBT keycaps that sound pretty nice. They are OEM profile as well. The OEM profile and the thick PBT really do lend nicely to the typing sound, especially with the lubed switches. That's right, these babies are pre-lubed and ready to go. They're not the greatest, but they get the job done. I'd say it gives this board an advantage over most other pre-built non-hot swap boards within this price range. You have your choice of the tactile Gateron orange switches, the linear Gateron pinks, or in my case, the Gateron yellows, which are a beloved favorite amongst budget keyboard enthusiasts. The board is soldered, so I can't take any of the switches out to disassemble and take a look at the lube job they've done. Kind of sounds like the switches are fairly lightly lubed. It does sound like it's a little inconsistent, but it at least sounds better than non-lubed switches. I'll just let the sound test speak for itself. Now listen to that compared to this Akko 3068 with Gateron pink switches that are not lubed. Gateron pink and yellow switches are both linears. As far as I can tell, the pink switches are very similar specs, if not the same specs, as Gateron reds. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is. Maybe it's the materials or something, but as far as I can tell, they're very similar to Gateron reds. Gateron yellows are a little bit heavier at 55 grams of actuation as opposed to 45 grams. And if you're unaware, Gateron yellow switches are popular for being amongst the smoothest stock switches that you can buy at a budget price point. And while I can agree that Gateron yellows feel pretty smooth out of the box, lubed, they're even smoother and they sound even better, in my opinion. Again, sound profile and whatnot is all subject to opinion and what you prefer. There's monsters out there who like clicky switches, so, you know, To each their own. These are the transparent RGB versions of Gateron Yellows, so nothing like milky top or milky housings of any kind. Speaking of RGB, this has to be probably some of the best looking RGB on a keyboard I've reviewed, right up there with something like the An Pro 2. Not counting of course something like the Gamma K66, that board is just cheating when it comes to RGB. On some boards I reviewed, I've complained that the RGB seems to be very dim. A lot of times I kind of blame that for the keycaps on those boards not being shine through, but even with non-shine through keycaps on this board, it's obviously way brighter than those. So kudos to Akko for the RGB on this board, and in fact I think it's, other than the Sakura Jelly, which again is cheating, I think this is the first Akko board in this style that I've seen that has the RGB already built in. They pulled it off. Good job. Going back to the sound of the board, the stabilizers are they're inconsistent, we'll say that. Especially with the switches being pre-lubed, there's kind of a contrast there from the nicer sounding alpha keys, and then you get to a stabilizer and it's just a rattle factory. It's not great. You can see the lube from the factory, but it just appears to be decoration because it doesn't seem to be doing very much. Of course, lube isn't going to completely fix any stabilizer. There's other things you have to take into consideration, but with this board being soldered, you really can't take it apart and fix the stabs yourself, at least without completely taking it apart and desoldering a bunch of switches. So, you know, if that's something you want to do, have fun, go nuts. As for me, no thank you. On my copy, the left shift and left side of the spacebar sound pretty bad, but all the stabs on the right side of the board, including the right side of the spacebar, sound better, with backspace probably sounding the best. There's no software for this board, as is always the case with Akko. Personally, I'm grateful as I tend to not really use keyboard software when I don't have to. If it works well for me out of the box, I'm happy, and that's always the case with Akko boards. Especially when it comes to some of these more budget-priced Chinese boards, the software tends to be kind of a roll of the dice, so you're probably better off not having the headache of having bad software to deal with. Instead, the board has some pre-programmed secondary functions you can activate by pressing the function key and a corresponding key, function key being this one here, the owl. You're going to want to keep the manual handy, at least at first, because none of the keys are marked with their secondary function, so the manual will be very nice to have at hand anytime you want to adjust the lighting or the volume with your keyboard. You can also program macros. I never use macros, so if you're curious about how macros work on this board, here it is. That all said, I feel like this board is one to really be excited about. If the aesthetics aren't doing it for you, I mean, what can you do? You can't really get past it. So far, I think this is the only one of their boards that is pre-lubed. I'm sure if it works well and it sells well, they'll keep coming out with other ones, hopefully other color variants, because they do have a lot of good options to choose from as far as aesthetics, but this is the only one I've seen that specifically says that these switches are pre-lubricated. There's also a Neon 3061 that does not say that it's pre-lubricated, at least on Banggood, so I don't know that it is. I would assume if it doesn't say so, it probably is not, because that's kind of a selling point. But if you just want a nice gaming and typing experience with lube switches without all the work of having to buy switches or take switches out and disassemble them and lube them, which takes hours, depending on how big the board is, it's worth it at the end, but if you don't want to go through all that, it is nice to have this little more budget-friendly option. If you are interested, I do have affiliate links in the description from Banggood.com. Again, they've got their Prime Summer Sale thing happening right now. There's also coupon codes that I believe are limited times, so if you're watching this video later, coupon codes probably don't work, but if you're watching it now-ish, hey, there you go. And if you do decide to purchase through my links in the description, it is at no extra cost to you, but it does help support the channel. And if you want to help support the channel, there's other links to other goodies in the description as well, including my social media, which you can follow me at to be updated about keyboard videos and other things happening, including when I have to take another break from posting. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. I am out.